Hello friends, my name is McKenna and welcome to Knit Between the Lines, a knitting podcast. This is a podcast where I talk about what I'm spinning, what I'm knitting on, and where I chat about my love for fiber arts. Now, grab whatever project you're working on and let's get into it. Okay, so first I want to talk about my works in progress. So my first one is probably the one I'm most excited about and was my most anticipated. We did chat about it as a planned cast on in the last podcast, but this is the Pressed Flowers Cardigan by Christoffers. I am using Spin Cycle Wilder in light gray as my main color, and then I'm also using Spin Cycle Dyed in the Wool in Straw Flowers for my contrast color. The size that I'm knitting for the Pressed Flowers cardigan is the size 4, which I believe has a finished bust measurement of 53 inches. I believe that's gonna give me about, I wanna say 7 inches of positive ease. My bust kind of hovers between a 45 and a 46 inch, and the suggested positive ease of the pattern is 6 inches. So I'm kind of just over that, but I don't personally mind. I do like my cardigans to be on the more oversized, comfy side, so we'll have to see. I did hit gauge pretty close. I'm at 23 inches, or 23 stitches per 4 inches, and it's supposed to be 24, but I did hit row gauge exactly. So that one stitch is kind of like, I wasn't gonna split hairs over it, especially because I already went down a needle size. And if I went down another needle size, I wasn't gonna have the appropriate needle to do the ribbing. So we're kind of playing with fire, but we're gonna see how it goes. So far, I think it's going great. So I'm not particularly worried about it, but maybe future McKenna will have something different to say. I just cast this on, I think a week ago, a little less than a week ago. I want to say like 5 days ago. And as you can see, I've got about like 5 inches of progress on this already. And I'm kind of surprised because it's mosaic knitting. So the rows are a lot shorter and you're essentially knitting like one row is essentially 2 rows of knitting because you're slipping one color and then knitting the other. Hi, Stella. But yeah, mosaic knitting tends to take a little longer because essentially every 2 rows is like knitting 1 row. Because when one row you're knitting one color, you're slipping the other, and then the next row it's flipped. So they can take a lot longer, especially to get length. So I'm quite surprised that I've kind of gotten so much done on this already in just a few days. I think it's just because it's really holding my attention right now and it's all I really want to be knitting on. And it was kind of a reward to myself for finishing some projects. Again, Pressed Flowers Cardigan by Christoffers. My next work in progress, we also talked about last podcast, and that is the Yarn Cozy Lite by Natalie from Knitty Natty. I'm still working on only the second cozy that I started last podcast, but I've gotten definitely a lot more length on it. This little stitch marker is pretty much where I left off with you guys last podcast. So I've gotten a good like 2.5 inches on this. This has very much been my like walk-in knitting for the last like week and a half because it's small and portable and I use my little caddy. I can't remember who makes these. Oh wait. Cottontail Farms makes these. I bought this from Rhinebeck last year and honestly, best purchase ever. Well, actually my husband bought it for me because he knew I wanted to start walking in knitting and he saw this and surprised me with it. So it was definitely a really nice purchase from him. But yeah, so I think I have about like an inch left of this before I start the decrease round and then into the I-cord bind off, which I do plan to still use the black contrast color. And I think I still have quite a bit of yarn left in this cake. So I do think I'll be able to squeeze out probably 2 50-gram cozies and maybe even a 10-gram if I'm feeling spicy. We'll have to see if I want to push my luck. But I have way more left over than I thought, which is funny considering I used the skein to knit a whole pair of socks. I didn't think I would have that much left over, but I'm not complaining. It's so cute. I can't wait to have a whole set of these, and I use them so much. Like my yarn for my Pressed Flowers cardigan is in 2 cozies, 2 50-gram cozies. and I love them. They're so great about keeping yarn bar from happening, especially when you get close to the very end where you basically have like a deflated little ball of mess yarn, and it's so hard to pull clean like strands of yarn out of the center. These definitely help because these are actually made of sock yarn, so there's a wool content in them. So the wool in the yarn that I'm using kind of sticks slightly to the inside of the cozy, and it's really, really nice. I highly recommend making these. They're very, very useful. And that's really all I have on current WIPs. I am still working on the Helical Twins hand warmers for my husband. I just haven't touched them since the last time we talked, so there's not really anything new to show you. I know he's really anticipating these to be finished soon, especially since we are into August here in Portland and fall is approaching, so he's really excited to have these for when the weather gets cooler, especially because at his job he does have to do rounds outside, so those will be nice for him to have when it gets cooler outside, especially because his hands get pretty chilly pretty quickly. So I do need to start putting some focus on those hand warmers. I think once I get through these cozies, that's gonna be my primary focus because I really want to get those done, and it'll just make me feel better that I have one less WIP from like a year ago crossed off my list. Now on to finished objects. The first one you can probably see as I'm wearing it. This is the Traveler's Cowl by Andrea Mowry that I had just started last podcast. I want to preface that it's been more than just a week between last episode and this episode due to just life things going on, learning how to edit the video, and I did not finish this in 1 week, I promise. It's probably more about 2.5-ish, but again, I got so like obsessed with this project that was pretty much all I was working on once I casted it on, because it was just like popcorn knitting, and I loved the yarn combination and the color combination. It was just kind of like a match made in heaven, and I couldn't put it down. So this is the Traveler Cowl. I love this. Mine ended up being a little bit bigger. This is technically, I believe, a sport weight yarn, and the pattern calls for a DK. I did not change my needle size though, because I am a looser knitter. I knit continental and my gauge tends to be a little looser. So I was hoping that by sticking with the same needle size but going down in yarn weight, I would kind of hit the same gauge. But the great thing about this pattern is it's actually gaugeless. So you can kind of play around with different weights of yarn, different needle sizes to get the drape and texture that you're wanting and thickness that you're wanting. So I didn't take a swatch, I didn't make a swatch, and I didn't measure gauge. So, but I think it worked out okay. This is a very drapey cowl, which I know for most of the time when Andrea's cowls, she makes them in her hand spun or spin cycle, so there's a little bit more structure because it's not as drapey of a fabric, which I do plan to make another one of these in hand spun that's made out of wool, so I do have that kind of structured around my neck vibe. But I do really like how drapey this one is, because I feel like this one will be nice for the spring into summer when it starts to get a little warm and we don't necessarily want wool around our necks. And it is so soft and it looks so good. I want to say that I used just over 2 skeins of this yarn as well, so it doesn't take a lot of yarn either, which is super exciting. This is probably going to be a really good stash buster pattern if you're interested. All right, so my next finished objects for knitting is those 2 pairs of socks that I was knitting for my friend Lacey. They turned out so good. So here is the first pair. This is the light blue pair that I knit with the contrasting dark heels and toes. I think these turned out so cute. I love the speckles in the light blue yarn, and I love the dark teal like stripes in the cuff as a contrast. I think these are so cute. It definitely gives like tube sock vibes. It's very retro feeling and I love that. These are the pair where I casted on 60 stitches instead of 64 to kind of mess around with what sock size fits her best. And they do still feel a little big, I won't lie. There is some extra fabric down here on the blocker. We'll see how she likes them, but I think these are really, really cute. I think this is my favorite colorway that I've used to knit for her. I also I love speckles. If I could knit with speckled yarn every day of my life, I probably would. I love it so much. The next pair is the kind of inverse of the last pair that I just showed you that we talked about last week, and it's these. So I used that darker teal variegated yarn as the main color, and then I used the light blue speckled yarn as the toes and heels. This one I cast it on an adult small size. So these are 56 inches. And I gotta say, I can even tell on the blocker that these are hugging the blocker a lot nicer than the next ones. So I'm curious to see if these are too small for her or if they're nice and snug and they stay up. So I'm curious to see what her feedback is. But I think these are so stinking cute. And I know she's gonna really like them too because she loves hand knit socks. And I think it's cute that I kind of made her a little set. All right, so now let's get into some spinning. I want to talk about my works in progress first for spinning. So the first one I want to talk about is my very first spin ever, which was the gray Gotland that I got from Rhinebeck back in October. I was talking to you guys last week about how I didn't realize that apparently this is a pretty difficult fiber to spin, and I chose it as my first for some reason, mostly because I was just too excited and I wanted to do it now. And I couldn't ply it yet because I didn't have a plying flyer, which is essentially just a jumbo flyer for my wheel, and I didn't have a jumbo bobbin because it ended up spinning up pretty thick and it was a lot of yarn, and I really didn't want to take up all of my bobbins just to ply and then have a bunch of little tiny skeins. So I decided to wait around for the jumbo flyer and bobbin, and I finally got it, and I got to ply it up. Here it is in all of her thick glory. I gotta say, this is like not terrible, I feel like, for a first spin. It definitely has some very thick neps in there, and I'm talking like thick neps, but I'm like pretty proud of it actually. A lot of people that I've talked to said that their first spin, it was almost unrecognizable as a yarn, and I feel like you can tell this is yarn. It's definitely a little hairy and like loosely spun and kind of inconsistent, but I'm pretty proud of it. I just need to skein this up, and I need to wash it, dry it, and thwack it, and then get the yardage and the weight. The only thing I don't have is a larger Knitty Natty. I do have two smaller 3D printed ones that are technically a yard, so when you wrap the yarn around it and you pull it off, the length of the yarn is a yard, so each loop is a yard, which is great and super easy to count yardage, but it makes these super tiny skeins, and I don't think that's gonna fly with this one because she's thick. She's a lot of yarn. So I want to look into one of the larger Knitty Natties that are about 1.5 to 2 yards for the loops, and those are usually the nice wooden ones. I just don't have the money right now to purchase one. So I think once I get my next paycheck, I'm gonna do some research, and I hope to find one that's collapsible so it'll take up less space. So hopefully next time I see you guys, or the podcast after that one, this is gonna be a finished object because it'll all be skeined up and pretty and ready to go. My next spinning whip that I want to talk to you guys about is the white or creamy Rambouillet that I purchased from Northwest Yarns. Last week it was just an acquisition. I very quickly wanted to spin it up because I loved the way it felt and how lofty and soft it was, and I was really curious how that felt to spin compared to the Gotland, which was a lot more rustic and hairy. Look at it, it's so pretty. And honestly, like, this compared to this, like, I feel like my skill level went up astronomically, and I don't know what happened. I don't know if I just kind of got all the kinks out with this one, and because it was so difficult to spin, this was like a dream to spin on. But I'm not gonna lie, I know I don't have a lot of experience with different fibers right now, but Rambouillet might be up there for me right now until I try different breeds, because it is just so soft and so light. I like can't wait to knit with this. It's gonna be so nice. I spun it up as a 2-ply with a short forward draft just because that's kind of the drafting style that I'm learning right now and getting the most comfortable with. I do want to try woolen drafting and long draw sooner rather than later because I do love woolen yarns. I just am trying to stick with an easier drafting method for now and kind of get used to spinning before I get a little bit more adventurous. But I did do a wraps per inch on this, and it's hitting at around 13, which is anywhere between a fingering, sport, and a DK, which again, like, it is hand spun, it is thick and thin. This is definitely more consistent than my last yarn, but it is kind of swinging between fingering, sport, and DK. But I think a textured knit like a traveler cowl will do this justice, because the texture will kind of hide it a little bit. And I'm currently spinning up the Blueface Leicester, and I'm gonna spin up the Kent Romney that I also purchased from Northwest Fibers, and I hope to spin them around the same thickness, so maybe I can use those to knit another traveler cowl. I just have to skein this up and wash it and then get the yardage and weight on it, but I'm extremely proud of this. I feel like I've come such a long way, and this is only like my 3rd spin ever, which is so exciting. Talk about me, think about all. Isn't that sweet? I guess so. Speaking of BFL, here is my current spinning project that I'm on right now, which is that oatmeal BFL that I also got from Northwest Yarns. It was a 4-ounce bump, just like the Brand Boulet and the Kent Romney. I am trying to spin it at about the same thickness as my Brand Boulet, but it definitely is different. It's not as lofty, it's a little bit more hairy, but I still feel like the consistency is there. There's definitely still some thicker parts and some thinner parts, but I don't think it's terrible. I can definitely see the improvement with every spin that I'm making, which is super exciting. And I'm hoping to get through these bumps of fiber before I get into the dyed fiber that I purchased, which I'm super excited about. But I am also doing a short forward draft on this one, and I'm aiming for a sport to a DK. We'll see where that lands us down the road. I really love the color of this. I think it's a really beautiful soft brown. I do love the feeling of the BFL as well, and it does have a little bit of a halo because it is more of a hairy fiber compared to like the finer wools like the Rambouillet and Merino. But I really do like it. I do definitely still think Rambouillet is my favorite, but this is still a lot of fun to spin up and kind of get a feel for. So I'm curious to see what this looks like once I apply it as well. I love her, she's doing great. I also do plan for it to be a 2-ply as well. I do want to branch out into 3-ply yarns soon. I am just thinking that I am spinning a little thicker than I would like to for a 3-ply, because I do tend to knit mostly with fingering sport and DK weight yarn. So I feel like I am spinning a little too thick right now to do a 3-ply. So I think once I get better with consistency and drafting a little bit thinner, I will start to experiment with 3-plies. I also only have these are only 4-ounce bumps, so I don't feel like I have quite enough fiber to get like a decent sized amount of yarn for a 3-ply. So these are kind of living at 2-plies right now, but I do have, I believe, 4-ounce to 6-ounce bumps of dyed fiber that I've purchased, and I believe that should be enough to potentially get us a 3-ply if we're feeling spicy. So we'll see. This is Eliza. You guys haven't got to meet her yet. She's a daddy's girl, and she's only giving me attention because her dad is in his office right now, but I'll take it. So yeah, those are my current works in progress for spinning, and I think they're coming along great. I can definitely see my progress as a spinner, which is super exciting. And I will say, even though I didn't like spindle spinning, I definitely think because I did spindle first, it kind of has expedited my progress in spinning on my wheel, because I do have a better idea of what drafting looks like and what over twisting looks and feels like, what under twisting looks and feels like, and I'm taking out that pressure of spinning while the spindle is going and taking out the frustration of the spindle dropping. So I definitely feel like, even though it was a time to learn how to spindle spin, it set me up for a major success in spinning on my wheel. The only finished object I have regards to spinning is my little itty bitty mini skein of that purple yarn I showed you guys last week from Alexandra, The Art of Yarn. And here she is in her beautiful glory. She looks so lovely. I'm very proud of this. With this being my second spin ever, I am so pleased with how this came out. It definitely is a little fluffy because I did choose to do a plying bracelet because I only had like just under an ounce of this fiber left, because I had used portions of it to attempt to spindle spin after my class once I got home from Rhinebeck, and I didn't know where it was. So I kind of just spun it all onto one bobbin and then tried to do the plying bracelet. And I can see how the plying bracelet would work great for smaller amounts of fiber or smaller amounts of singles, but the friction of the fiber rubbing against itself and against my wrist, I think just kind of, it didn't felt it, but it just kind of made it like fuzzy, which isn't a texture that I super love. It's one thing if the wool does it on its own and that's just a character of the breed or the style of spinning you're doing, but that's not what I was really going for with this. You can't super tell on camera, but I think it would have just had that one little leg up if I hadn't done the plying bracelet. But you know, hindsight's 2020. I have now learned, and I probably won't be doing the plying bracelet again unless it's for just like the end of one bobbin. One bobbin finishes before the other and I want to use up the whole single. So that might be the only other time that I do the plying bracelet. But you know, we're learning. I'm here to share my mistakes with you so you don't have to learn from your own mistakes. In true knit between the lines fashion, my camera stopped recording. So back to what I was saying. I think this is probably going to be hitting her anywhere between a worsted to potentially a DK, because again, it's thick and thin. There are definitely some parts that are super thick and chunky and fuzzy, and there are other parts that are a little thinner. Like this, for example, that's for sure like a fingering weight or a lace weight. Like that's super, super thin. We have this chunky guy right here, which is definitely hitting at a worsted or like chunky weight. So it's not a consistent yarn, but like, I don't think you can tell, and I'm pretty proud of that. So I can't wait to see what the other bobbins look like once I get those all skeined up. Okay, so now I want to talk about acquisitions. So I got the amazing opportunity to go to FOC Fiber Festival this past weekend in Seattle, Washington. There was no possible way I was gonna walk out of that convention center without buying something. I know I mentioned last week that I was on a yarn ban. I definitely walked out of that convention center with some yarn. But I don't think anyone could possibly blame me because the amount of temptation in that room was astronomical. There was so much more damage I could have done to my stash and my wallet, but I feel like I did a pretty good job if I do say so myself. I definitely don't think I did as much damage as I did at Rhinebeck in October. So let me show you all the goodies. The first set of yarns I want to show you is from the lovely ladies at Spin Cycle. So there has been this colorway that was released a few weeks ago that I have been thinking about nonstop because I have just absolutely loved the colors, and it is this one. This is Launch Test in their dyed in the wool base, which is their sport weight. And it is absolutely lovely. It has like these brick reds and burnt oranges and these like seafoam greens and teals in it. And I loved this skein in particular at their booth because it's a little bit more moody. And I loved that there was like equal parts of that blue and that red and that orange. Oh, there are some other skeins though that are more blue and are more light blue. There's some that are more of that red. I just really liked how balanced this one was, and I loved how moody it was. I saw this and I knew I had to get it. I'm one of those people where I don't like to buy yarn just to buy yarn. I need a project or a pattern in mind to justify the purchase. So of course I looked at this and I was like, what can I make with this? Because this is absolutely lovely. The first thing that popped into my head was the Shift Cowl by Andrea Mowry. And I think this is gonna look so good in it. So I immediately went hunting for some complementary colors to go with this skein to achieve that really pretty gradient look of the Shift Cowl. And I did run into a little bit of trouble because they had so many colorways available at their booth. It was probably the most Spin Cycle I've ever seen in my life, and it was so cool to see a lot of colorways that I've never seen in person before or even online. So it was super cool to kind of have this whole library available to me to make the perfect color palette for the Shift Cowl, but it was also super overwhelming. So I actually talked to Micah, and who is a color genius, as we all know, because we see her projects on the Spin Cycle Instagram all the time and all of the staples she knits for their flagship store up in Washington. So I asked her, I was like, hey, I love this Launch Test so much, and I want to make a Shift Cowl. Do you have any recommendations for color pairings? And I had already had this colorway in my hands. This is Velocore. This was just the first color that I kind of grabbed because it's more of a deeper orange color, but I really felt like it went well with this. And I asked her opinion and she definitely agreed. She said that these look great together, but she thinks for the third color, we need to go more on the cooler side. So we kind of walked around, we were thinking of different things. Originally we were thinking of Melancholia, which is more of a like blue-green and it's a little more saturated, but then we saw this guy. This is Lite. It's kind of Melancholia's cousin. It's just a little softer. It's not as saturated. And it definitely leans more on the greener end of green blue. But I think these look so good together. Especially because this color, you can see right in here. You can kind of see it right in there. That nice, deep teal color. And then you have all of the warm oranges and brick reds and yellows in this skein that are also present in Launch Test. And I think these look so good together. I think this is gonna be a great cowl. I do plan to go from cool to warm, I think, mostly because I am cool toned in my skin tone and cooler tones tend to complement me a little bit better. Warm tones tend to make me look a little pinker and a little redder. So I think by having Lite closer to my face and then fading down into Velour will look really, really cool. This will be lovely for the fall and I think it's gonna look great. I also just love the combination of like reds and oranges with like these tealy blue colors. I think they look so great together. My next yarn acquisitions from Flock are from two different companies. So the first skein is Explorer Knits and Fibers and it is this lovely bright skein. It is Pepperoncini on their Denali sock, which is their superwash merino and nylon base. I saw it's coming across a lot more yellow on camera than it is in real life. It's definitely more of a like greeny yellow. Hi, my love. It is definitely leaning a lot more yellow on camera, but in person it definitely has more of a green tint to it, hence the name Pepperoncini. This was the Mate to Lemon Drop from their monochrome collection. This was one of the colors where I didn't purchase it during the pre-order during their monochrome collection, but I regretted not doing so because it was such a fun color. But these colors are not really in my wheelhouse. They're not colors I tend to wear very often. So I wasn't sure A, what I would make with it, B, if I would wear it. So I was hesitant to spend the money and time knitting something with it and then never wearing it. But Brienne Moody came out with the cutest accessory I've ever seen, and it is the sideline wrap. And I have been seeing everyone's projects and samples in stores and all the fun colors people have been using to make this project. And I was like, you know what? Like, I think I could use this yarn in an accessory. Originally, I was thinking of maybe a musselburgh or a ribbed hat or some sort of beanie. But when I saw that project and then I saw that Spin Cycle came out with a brand new colorway right before Flock that they told us where they were going to bring to Flock, I was like, this is literally perfect. And it is this yarn right here. This is Straw Baby in Dyed to the Wool, and I think these look so stinking cute together. You can see that they have that same yellow green like right here in this skein. It's just a little hint of it. It's not a lot in there, but it's enough to where these will look very cohesive together. And I think the like lighter pinks and lavenders and like lilacs in this skein will kind of tone down the super bright neon. And I think this will look so fun as a little like accessory to go around my hair. And I think because it's an accessory, I'll wear it. I can wear it with like a nice neutral shirt. As soon as I saw that Spin Cycle announced this, I immediately saw these two together for the sideline wrap. Again, I'm not much of a neon person. I don't wear them very often, but I feel like these were just such fun colors and they paired so nice together because of that small hint of green in the Straw Baby that I couldn't not buy them. And I really think it'd be such a fun pop of color in my wardrobe to wear. And Straw Baby definitely comes in different varieties of colors. A lot of the ones I had seen at the booth by the time I was able to make it over to Spin Cycle were definitely a lot more pastel-y. They had more of a light pink, light purple, lavender, not so much of that like lime green, green yellow, and the brighter pinks. But one of the ladies I was talking to who's also looking at the skeins, I was telling her my plans and I showed her this yarn. She immediately snagged this skein for me. It was like, this will be perfect. And it was the only one left at the time that had that really nice like pop of that yellow green that matched my skein that I was looking for. So like, thank God for her. I was gonna be super sad if I wasn't gonna be able to find a skein that matched this perfectly. But I think this will be so much fun, and I definitely think it'll push me out of my comfort zone, and it'll be so fun to knit. I think it'll be so fun in my hair as a hair wrap. My next acquisition for yarn, this is my last acquisition of yarn, I just wanna say. So I left that fiber festival with only 4 skeins of Spin Cycle, 1 skein from Explorer Knits, which was a feat because I want to buy everything from Spin Cycle and I want to buy everything from Explorer Knits because everything they put out is amazing and I love them. So it was with great restraint that I only left with those. So my husband came with me to Flock. He just kind of was there to hang out, spend some time with me, meet some new people, and be, you know, moral support and also my voice of reason with purchases. We walked past Pacific Knits and Fangirl Fibers, and he was like, oh, like what's going on over there? And I got to show him the doodle cowl and kind of the concept of the doodle cowl and how there's like these different card packs that have different themes and different color work charts where you can kind of make your own color work design cowl and you can make your own color palette. And he thought that was just so cool. And I looked at him, I was like, hey, like, do you want one? Like, I will purchase some of the doodle packs and I'll purchase some yarn and I will knit you a doodle cowl. And he was like, I would literally love that. So it was super fun walking around the booth and like picking out the different packs that we wanted to get, picking out different doodle kits and things that he liked. We originally thought we were going to build our own doodle palette, but he ended up liking a couple of the ones that were pre-made by Fangirl Fibers. The first one he thought about was getting this dark academia one, which kind of faded from like a light gray to a deep, deep burgundy. But then I found this doodle kit, which is the Fellowship of the Ring doodle kit. And it essentially goes from this really light creamy color into a gray, into a mossy green, into a very warm golden yellowy brown, into a dark brown, and then down into a black. This is his color palette to a T. I saw him all over this, and he also loves the Lord of the Rings. We watched through all the movies, I want to say about a year ago, and he really, really liked them. So the combination of the theme of the yarn and the colors, it was kind of a no-brainer. So we got this to do the infinity loop doodle cowl. He doesn't want anything super close to his neck, which is why we decided to go for the infinity doodle cowl instead of just the standard cowl, because the infinity cowl we can make a little bit longer so it doesn't sit quite as tight around his neck. And then he also wanted an ear warmer or a headband. So we purchased the sock set of the same colors, which is the Fellowship of the Ring, which should give us enough yardage to make an infinity scarf and the ear warmers. Honestly, this kit is a half skein kit, so these are all 50 grams, I believe, of DK weight yarn. So I probably would have had some scraps left over for the ear warmer, but I just don't think it would have been enough for both. So I think the sock set will be just enough to kind of push us over the edge. And if I have scraps, that's fine. I will just make a scrappy project with the rest. So, and I've always wanted to make a doodle cowl. I just don't think I would personally wear it. I think it would be a lot of fun to knit, but I don't think it's a utilitarian piece that I would wear to warrant the effort of knitting. So it was really, really exciting that Cameron wanted one, because now I get to enjoy the process of knitting it, and then he gets to enjoy wearing it, and I get to enjoy seeing him wearing it. I love seeing him wear the different things that I make for him. It just makes my heart very, very warm. So I'm super excited to get this on the needles for him. And I'll show you the packs that we decided on as well. We had to change the lighting because it was getting really dark, so I want to show you the doodle packs that Cameron and I both kind of decided on. So the both of us are super big autumn lovers. That's our favorite season of the year. We love fall and all the coziness that comes with it, the crispy weather, the colors, all the vibes. So that's why for the core option for the doodle packs, we both decided on the autumn doodle pack, which has a bunch of different color work motifs in it. It has leaves and acorns, pumpkins. It has like a little bar that's just like a flannel looking motif. Hot chocolate, and there's also a bunch of Halloween ones in here, like black cats and pumpkins and ghosts and witches, brooms, all that kind of stuff. So Eliza, are you talking in the background? We decided to get the core pack of the autumn doodles, which I think will be super cute, especially with the kind of color palette that he chose, which is very fall in my personal opinion. It's very warm leaning and it has those nice browns and that kind of warm toned green. I think it'll look really, really fun. And to kind of mix in with the autumn doodles, we got, of course, the Portland doodle pack, because how could we not, since we just moved to Portland a few months ago and we absolutely love it here. We very much have fallen in love with Portland in the couple months that we've been here. We love the area, we love the people, we love the atmosphere, we love the culture and the vibe. So of course we had to purchase the Portland doodle pack, and it's super fun because there's like a bike in it, because Portland is super big into biking. Multnomah is in there, which is like a big famous waterfall in the area. There's a raincoat, there's umbrellas, there's pictures of the different bridges, there's the Portland neon sign. It's super fun, and there's coffee and donuts because of Voodoo Donuts, and there's umbrellas. It's so cute, and I think it's gonna look, these motifs are gonna look so cute with the autumn option as well. And for myself, I actually purchased the garden doodle deck, mostly because I just loved the ladybugs and the potted plants that were in there, and the bees and the butterflies, and there's vines, and there's like a trowel, there's a hose, a watering can, there's little rain boots, and I just thought these were so stinking cute. If I ever do decide to make myself a doodle cowl, this will probably be my main shtick, is this pack. But I mostly got it for colorwork socks. I do love me some colorwork socks, or maybe even gloves. I think these would be super cute. Or a hat. Oh my gosh, I have so many ideas. But I bought this one for me because I know I'll wear like colorwork hats or colorwork socks, and I think these would look so cute in a pair of socks. So I bought this one for me. Okay, so that is all I purchased for yarn. Only yarn, specifically from Flock Fiber. I did purchase 2 non-fiber things, and the first one I want to show you are these super cute earrings from Reiko Co. And she is a Portland local bead artist, so she hand beads these and weaves them. And I think these are so stinking cute. They're granny squares, and no one is alike. So every single one that she makes is unique. So you'll never find a pair that are exactly the same. They always have a little bit of a different vibe to them. I know she sold some of these during the Rose City Yarn Crawl back in March. If you watch Natalie or Knitty Natty on YouTube, she does talk about the granny square earrings that she purchased from Ken as well. And back then she was only selling them individually. At Flock, she actually had paired them and curated pairs that you could choose from that kind of had the same color family to them. And I just thought these were so stinking cute. Purple, orange, and green are kind of my go-to colors to wear, especially during the fall time. And these are so cute. I wore them for day 2 of Flock, and I just like loved them. They were so stinking cute. So I would definitely check her out. She has different beaded options as well. She had little pigeons, she had little anchovies, there was lemon slices. She also had stitch markers that had the granny square motif. She also had dangly earrings that were like 2 to 3 little baby mini granny squares stacked on top of each other. I would definitely go support her if you like these, because I will probably be wearing these non-stop. The next thing that I purchased that is not yarn or fiber is actually this beautiful wood burned wraps per inch tool. This is from a small business called Sunrise Grove. I believe they only have an Etsy shop right now. That's what she was telling me at her booth. But she has a bunch of knitting and spinning tools that are wood burned. So she has like gauge swatches, she has the protractors, she has the wraps per inch tool, she has a whole bunch of different stuff. I do have a couple clips of her booth that I will have in a later part of the video for a little vlog from Flock for you guys to see. And she had a whole bunch of different designs. She had one that was sheep with Seattle in the background. There was one that had a llama. There was ones that had tarot designs on the front. They were all super beautiful too, and they're high quality. And I have been needing a wraps per inch tool in order to figure out the thickness of my yarn, and I knew I had to snag one of these when I saw them. So this will be a permanent feature on my wheel from now on. now we're getting to the last part of my flock haul, and this is the fiber, because you know now that I'm into spinning, I couldn't walk out of a fiber festival without some hand-dyed fiber. So the first one I want to show you is this beautiful colorway. Let me back up so you can see it. This is Pumpkin and Fig from Woolly Wildflower. This is her BFL base. I believe it's just 100% BFL. Yep. And it looks like she is based in the Olympic Peninsula in Shelton, Washington. So she is local to the Pacific Northwest. And she actually had a sample of this yarn spun up, and I fell in love with how it spun up, which I know how I spin it will be different from hers. Everyone spins differently, especially thickness wise. But I just loved the colors of this. We have different shades of purple, and there's like oranges and this like fuchsia color, this more blue purple, there's some browns, there's some peaches, some very light blushes. I think this will look so stinking pretty. I don't have a project plan for this yet. I do think it'll just kind of be a free spin. It doesn't look like it is one that fades. I think it's just kind of not haphazard dyeing, but kind of random dyed. So there's no like color method to it. But once I unbraid this, that might be different. So we'll have to see. But I just loved the colors, and I loved the way her sample looked that I had to purchase it. So the next fiber I purchased from Flock is from 316 Dye Studios. It is on their Polworth base, and it is in their colorway Wooden Duck. This is actually a colorway my husband picked out, and he wants me to knit something for him in it, which I don't know what it's gonna be yet, but we'll see. We'll see. It depends on what kind of yardage I get. But isn't this lovely? Like this super pretty teal in here, these like orangey browns, there's a gray, there's a white. I just think this is so freaking lovely. I almost want to steal it from him because I also really liked it, but I won't do that because I love him. And he's super knit worthy, he's super spin worthy. So it'll be really fun to spin this up for him and knit something in it. If you have any project ideas, that'd be great. I don't want to do socks because there's no nylon content in here, so I'm thinking potentially using it as a contrast color for a hat, or it was going to be ear warmers, but then he wanted the doodle ear warmers, so we'll see. But this will be super fun to spin up. And I've never spun Polworth before, and the lady who owns 316 Dye Studios, she says it's actually her absolute favorite base to spin up, and she thinks I will super enjoy it. So I can't wait to get this on my wheel and see how I like it. My last and final purchase from Flock is this beautiful braid of fiber from Hello Lavender. This is their Flock 2024 exclusive colorway, and I love this. I love how muted it is, and it has these very warm yellows and peaches and this lovely like champagne-y blush color. I love how soft it is, the colors are, and I think it's gonna look so beautiful. I also was really good about not buying a ton of Flock exclusive colorways and yarns and fibers while I was at the show, but I couldn't walk away from this one, and I had to buy it. So this base is 100% Rambouillet, which we know I love. It looks like it is a 20 to 23 micron base, hence why it is so soft. I think it's going to be absolutely lovely to spin with. Everything Hello Lavender puts out is beautiful. I have a clip of some other colorways she had also offered at Flock, which were so hard to walk away from, but I was trying to be diligent and only buy a handful of things. So this is what I ended up walking away with. So now for non-Flock acquisitions. So this I bought before I broke my yarn ban, RIP. But it is more hand-dyed fiber. The first one we have is from Yarn Jam. This is Lake Cottage in her Shiniko tweed base. Shiniko is a cross between Rambouillet and Merino, and you can tell because it's absolutely lovely. It has the nice loftiness of that Rambouillet, and it's so soft because of the cross between Rambouillet and Merino that like I almost like don't want to spin it because it's so soft, and I just want to be able to squish it every day of my life. But their tweed base is really, really cool because it has like these neps in it that you can kind of see here. And those are 6% acrylic and 5% rayon. whereas the natural Shiniko is 89%. So it's not a high percentage of the artificial fiber, but enough to kind of get those tweedy streaks through it. I think this is gonna be so fun to spin. I do plan on attempting a fractal spin. I'll kind of have to see how the colors look when I take it out of the braid and I steam it and open up the fiber to kind of see what the colors look like. If it is a color gradient, like I'm hoping it is, I do want to attempt a fractal spin. I think I'm gonna try to do a 3-ply, because I don't plan on getting to this fiber for a while, because I want to kind of get through all of the smaller bumps of fiber that I bought to kind of learn on and get my hands on different breeds. So I'm hoping by the time I get to this, I will be able to spin thin enough for a nice like DK weight 3-ply. So we'll have to see. Can you tell I have a color palette, by the way? Because I feel like everything that I've showed you guys has like teal and pink and orange and yellow in it, so. But you know, you like what you like, so. My last 2 acquisitions are also from Yarn Jam, and they are also fiber, but I plan to do a combo spin between the 2 of them. First one I want to show you is this one. This is At the Shore. This is on her Shiniko base, not the tweed one, just regular Shiniko, which is that cross between Rambouillet and Merino, and so soft. And look at the colors. This one is looking a lot more yellow than what I saw online, which I'm not upset about at all. But we have this like goldy yellow, there's some oranges, there's some light pinks in there, there's that green, blue, and green, and then you kind of just have a creamy white natural base throughout. And I think this is really, really beautiful. And I plan to spin it with this guy, which is Spring Break, also from Yarn Jam, also on the Shiniko base. This one is so pretty. I love like the super dark gray coming through it, and I think the orange in here is way brighter compared to this yellowy. The yellow in this one is a lot more pale. It's not as saturated. You also have more of the blue coming through in that green, and the green is more of like a sagey kind of color in it. And I think these spun together are gonna look so nice because they complement each other. This one is essentially just like a paler cousin of this guy, and I think they'll look so nice. I'm so excited. I think they're gonna look so good. It might come out super muddy, who knows, but I think they complement each other well enough that it'll look really good, especially because this one is leaning paler, more pink, more of a light yellow, and this one has way more saturated oranges, and there's that really stark gray brown in it, and the greens are a little more saturated as well. So I think these will look really, really nice together, but who knows, maybe they won't, and we'll know for next time. But I think it'll be really, really fun to find out. All right, so that is all for WIPs, FOs, and acquisitions. So now I just kind of want to touch base with you guys about what's going on in my life right now. So obviously the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that I had the opportunity to go to Flock Fiber Festival in Seattle this past weekend. It was so much fun. There is just something about being surrounded by people that also love to do what you do, and that sense of community and belonging. It was so much fun. I got to meet so many new people. I got to get exposed to different dyers, especially because I know a lot of dyers and brands from the East Coast, because I spent most of my life in Indiana. I spent most of my knitting career in Boston, because I didn't start knitting until about 4 years ago. I got super into it during COVID, and we had moved to Boston after we had graduated college, so most of my hobby of knitting really kind of exploded while being in Boston. So it was super fun to go to a more Pacific Northwest, West Coast centric fiber festival and be exposed to so many different dyers and crafters and makers. It was so amazing. Everyone was so welcoming and so kind. Everyone was so excited to be there. Everyone was willing to answer questions and get to know each other. I got to sit and knit with a couple people. I actually got to get closer with Natalie from Knitty Natty and her husband Kent. It was super fun to sit with them and some of her members and just knit and chat and show each other what we bought from Flock that day and did a show and tell. It was so nice to be a part of a large community, especially because because I didn't know that many people there at the time, with me being so new to the Pacific Northwest. And honestly, I can't wait for next year. I highly recommend going to a fiber festival if there is one near you. The only other one I was able to go to was actually Rhinebeck back in October, which I know is like the Mac Daddy of fiber festivals. And at that point, we knew we were more than likely going to be moving out of Boston. We wanted to take the opportunity of being so close to New York and go to Rhinebeck when we could. And I'm so glad we did. It was an amazing experience. It's definitely larger than Flock on a larger scale. It's definitely overwhelming, but it's so amazing to feel that feeling of community and knowing that everyone is just as yarn and fiber crazy as you are. I feel like it's a great way to meet new people and expose yourself to new people and new things and new crafts, new dyers, and kind of expand your palette, you know? Flock was such an amazing experience, and I can't wait to go again next year. I think the biggest thing that I took away from Flock was the connections and hopefully new friends that I have made. Natalie is absolutely the sweetest person on the planet, and it was so nice to get to know her and talk to her and just knit and have a good time. Even though we did go to Seattle for Flock, we also took that opportunity to explore Seattle because it is a large major city and it's a new to us city as well. My husband did come with me, even though he's not a crafter, he also very much enjoyed Flock, but I wanted to make sure that we got to do some not yarn things. So we got to go and see the Space Needle. We went down to Pike Place and walked around the open air market, which was super fun to see all the different vendors and the different kinds of food that were there. It was a lot larger than it looks from the outside because there actually is a floor underneath, as well as it spans quite long down the street. There's also some iconic Seattle businesses there like Piroshki, and the first Starbucks that ever opened is down in Pike Place, obviously because the coffee, Pike Place. It was so much fun to see different walks of life and try different foods and buy different vendors. Cameron and I actually have a tradition of buying a postcard from every city that we visit or live in, as well as we're starting a tradition of buying some sort of local artist's depiction of a major icon of the city. So we bought this postcard. It was only like 35 cents. Postcards are also like a super cheap souvenir to buy. And we actually framed them and put them up on a wall in our apartment. We call it our traveling wall. The center of it is a picture of the Garden of the Gods in Colorado that my husband actually took. And then surrounding that is the different postcards we've gotten from London, from Boston, from Washington, DC, from Stonehenge, from Maine, from here, because we moved here. So it's super exciting to be able to add our first new postcard in our new apartment. And the piece of art that we purchased to go up on a different wall, the different wall already has a beautiful watercolor depiction of the Common from Boston. So we really wanted to grab a local artist's piece that depicted Seattle. And we ended up choosing this, which is a depiction of Pike Place. And it even has, they're all carrying umbrellas because Seattle is known to be very rainy. And you have the iconic sign for Pike Place Public Market. And it is so cute and it's so sweet. I think this is actually just a scan of her original piece, but she has her signature down here. And she was just selling different of her pieces, and we loved this one. So we're super excited to frame it and put it up with our Boston Common watercolor. Okay, some other life things that aren't Flock. I recently started spinning in the park with a couple local fiber friends that I've met either online or through Discord. The first one that I went to, I didn't have a wheel at the time. I just brought my knitting and I got to sit and watch everyone spin. I did mention this in the last podcast because this is what ultimately really pushed me over the edge to finally purchase a wheel, because I was just so inspired by everyone there. So it was super fun that the next one I got to go to, I got to bring a wheel and I got to spin and I got to enjoy that communal experience with these other people. It was so much fun, and I feel so inspired every time I leave, and I feel that I am making friends and connections in Portland, which is super exciting because there's always that fear when you move to a new place that you're not going to connect with people or you're not going to make friends, and sometimes my anxiety gets the best of me. So it was really nice to go and feel welcomed, and people remembered me and they talked to me, and I got to ask them questions about spinning and learn new things and different techniques. So I can't wait to continue to go. It was a lot of fun. Some smaller things going on in my life right now is that I work with a wonderful lady who loves gardening, and she always brings in these fresh cut flowers every week to the lab to kind of brighten up the place, which is lovely. And she inspired me, and I was talking to her about gardening and like, oh, like if I wanted to start gardening, like where should I start? And she actually suggested, since it was the end of July, beginning of August at the time, that if I really wanted to, I could probably plant some sunflowers in a little flower box on my balcony to kind of feel it out and see what I like, especially because sunflowers are easier to grow. So of course, I immediately that day after work went to Fred Meyer and purchased a flower box, soil, seeds, and all the things I could ever need to plant sunflowers on my balcony. Right now, they are just stems. There's no blooms or anything, but they've grown so quickly. I'm super excited, especially because I can't really have plants in our apartment. Liza, who you saw earlier in the podcast, loves to eat plants, basically anything green or with petals or anything. And as you know, a lot of plants are toxic to cats, and I would hate myself if something ever happened to one of our cats because I needed to have plants or flowers in the apartment. So by keeping them on the balcony, I'm gonna still achieve that like serotonin, dopamine boost of having living plants around me. So I'm kind of taking it into my wheelhouse, and we went to IKEA and we bought some really nice porch furniture. We bought a nice little hanging lamp to go on our porch, and now I have a flower box for sunflowers. So I'm hoping in the spring I can get a couple more flower boxes and plant a couple different flowers and kind of make it a sanctuary or an oasis that we can kind of escape to and have some greenery and some plant life and some color around us. As far as for what I'm reading and watching right now, I just finished Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross, which has been a super recommended book talk book on my feed for a while. I actually have the physical copy on my bookshelf, but I do prefer to read on my e-reader, especially because I like to read during my breaks at work, and it's a lot easier to bring my Kindle versus a actual hard copy book. But I finished Divine Rivals in I think 2 days. And it was so good. I think I would rate it maybe like 4 stars. I don't think it's 5-star worthy, but I think it was better than 3. So I definitely recommend it. I think it's a good read, and it's a quick read because it's only a couple hundred pages, so it's an easy read as well. So of course, that means I'm currently reading Ruthless Vows, which is the second book. I'm not that far into it yet, but I kind of can't wait to dive in and really kind of devour it over the next couple days. As far as shows, I just finished House of the Dragon, which I loved. It was really, really good. I do wish that there had been some more plot progression. I do feel like this was essentially just a lot of filler episodes in my personal opinion, but it was still really, really good. And I was talking with some friends and they're like, hey, well, if you think about it, the first season basically was covering like 30 years. So of course it felt a lot faster. Whereas the second season really only covered like a month, maybe. So of course it feels a little slower. But I do think it set us up really well for the season 3, which is of course where the big battle happens. So I'm really curious to see if they follow the books or if they kind of take their own creative take on it. And my husband and I are currently binging Dexter on Netflix. He has seen it before, I've not, and which is kind of surprising because I love kind of true crime or crime inspired shows. Like Criminal Minds is my go-to throw on show. I think the fact that it was filmed in the early 2000s kind of threw me because, you know, back then things were a little more cheesy, but it's really, really good. And this tends to be the show that we put on when we're just kind of eating dinner for the night and we watch a couple episodes and then we head to bed. But it's really good, so I'm really excited to see where it goes from here. I had such an amazing time at Flock this past weekend, and I'm so glad that I got to share my experience with you all, especially if you weren't able to make it. Please comment down below if you have any questions about my experience at Flock, or if you've seen anything in the little vlog that you have questions about or want clarification on, or if you're just curious about any of the yarns or projects or patterns that I mentioned today in the podcast. I will try my best to link everything down below if I can, so hopefully that'll be a good resource for you if you have any questions. If you liked this video and you would like to see more of me, please like and subscribe and hit that bell icon so you can get alerts when I post. Thank you all again for stopping at my little crafty corner of YouTube, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.